What is up, Light Fam? Welcome to another video. My name is David, your spiritual awakening coach, here to help you through your spiritual awakening. Now, you guys know that I make a lot of videos which call to your attention the agenda and narratives of the ego. In fact, I would say a spiritual awakening is waking up to the fact that you are not your ego, which then allows you to observe and analyze from a more emotionally neutral state. And when you're in this emotionally neutral state, you are then able to better perceive intuition. But what is intuition, and how do we know when it's not just our mind? Well, let's get into that fascinating topic right now. Let's go. So what is intuition? Intuition is a gut knowing without any logical or rational reasoning as to why you know. You just know that you know. We've all heard the phrase, trust your gut. Well, what is not your gut? Well, it's not your mind. So that means that the information is not coming from your ego. We've heard the phrase, think long, think wrong. Again, another phrase suggesting that too much mind, too much thinking can easily lead us to a wrong decision. I've heard many spiritual teachers say that your gut or your instinct is the radio by which your higher self communicates with you. So again, this would suggest that feeling of intuition, insight, and knowing is coming from here and not here. But why would that be? Because it's your heart that receives information from outside of yourself. I'm going to link a couple of videos from Gregg Braden in the description below, where he discusses how scientists discovered back in 1991 that the heart has over 40,000 sensory neurites. The heart has its own neural network, which thinks, learns, and remembers independently of the cranial brain. And now scientists actually call the heart the little brain. And since we know that the ego is a mind thing, it's not a subconscious or a heart thing, we now scientifically know that information coming from the heart is not coming from ego. Remember when I said earlier that a spiritual awakening is waking up to the fact that you're not your ego? This allows you to move into a more heart-centered space and less of a mind-centered space, which then allows you to more openly and freely receive greater amounts of insight and with greater clarity, because you're not distracted by the noise level of your ego. So how do we know what is intuition and what is ego? Well, remember we said that intuition is that feeling of knowing. Feeling is not mental chatter. Mental chatter is what the ego does. And we're all too familiar with that conversation, right? Well, what if they don't like me? Will I be provided for? Will I ever find love again if I make this decision, etc., etc.? That mental chatter is language. It's not feeling. And notice that that language carries the frequency of fear, which is the hallmark of the ego. So if you have a whole bunch of language in your head that is emotionally attached to an outcome, meaning I'll be happy or unhappy, I'll be worthy or unworthy, dependent upon some external event or outcome, then that's ego. The ego is very good at making a whole bunch of what if scenarios, but intuition is just knowing and then taking action, knowing that everything will turn out perfectly, exactly as it should. So how do we come into greater vibrational alignment with our intuition? Well, remember I said earlier that a spiritual awakening allows you to be more heart-centered and less mind-centered. And this is really where meditation is worth its weight in gold. I know that you guys are tired of hearing me preach about meditation all the time, but it really is that important, because meditation allows you to get centered and still your mind and get calm and quiet, which then allows you to step into what's called the observer mind. The observer mind sits in a place of emotional neutrality, unattached to outcome. When you're detached from outcome, your mind is no longer off in some future scenario that doesn't even exist. Only the present moment exists. But when you are centered in the present moment in a state of mindfulness, you can then feel the information coming from your heart. You're even still enough to sense a change in your heart rate when you're receiving insight from your higher self. So even if you haven't fully committed to meditation just yet, but I know that you will, I have faith in you, at least practice mindfulness so that your ego doesn't distract you from what your heart is trying to tell you. So how else can we discern what is intuition and what is ego? Well, intuition is usually linear, meaning we're given the answer one breadcrumb at a time in succession. It's usually the mind, being the great strategist that it is, that will try to write the entire story from beginning to end. That's because the ego is all about control. The ego feels warm and fuzzy if it thinks that it has everything figured out. The problem with that is that it leaves you with this overwhelming feeling of too much information to digest, which then can lead to analysis paralysis. So if you're feeling overwhelmed and stymied, that's coming from ego. The ego has a limited view. It doesn't have the bird's eye view that your higher self has. And your higher self is never going to put anything in your heart that's going to make you feel overwhelmed and anxious about some future outcome. My final piece of advice on how to use intuition is to get into the habit of acting on your intuition. A lot of people struggle to trust themselves. Your higher self is always going to give you insight for your highest good. So act on those subtle hits of intuition. This trains the mind to trust yourself. Demonstrate to yourself through inspired action, not through busy work, that you can trust yourself, that you are guided for your highest good, which does wonders for anxiety, by the way. And remember, spirit is never rushed or hurried with this sense of running out of time. If that's the energy, then that message is most likely coming from the ego. So trust your intuition, like fam. All right, now it's time for question of the day. Give an example of the last time you trusted your intuition. If you feel comfortable sharing with the Light Fam, please leave that in the comments below. If you need a helping hand trusting your intuition, we can work one-on-one through Zoom. Check the description box for that. If you have a question for me, add me over on Instagram _Lightways. Until next time, I'll see all of you guys in the next video. Light, love, and abundance to all that are watching and to all you love. Peace, guys.